We got a Rams-Browns mega preview coming up, how the Rams can continue to improve their playoff chances, key matchup storylines, and more. That's coming up on this crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On Browns.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley? What is up, Browns fans? Up to the Dog Pound. Welcome to this crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On Browns. And if you have yet, be sure to subscribe to the Locked On Rams YouTube channel. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And my name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade. SI 24/7 Sports, Dodgers Nation, now the Rams for Locked On. And today I'm joined by the Locked On Browns host, Mr. Jeff Lloyd, rocking that sweet, sweet Dog Pound Browns hoodie. We're breaking down this Week 13 matchup, a critical matchup for both teams. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams and Locked On Browns is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Now, Jeff, Week 13, Dog Pound Rams house. It's going down. Rams coming off 2 straight wins. They're trying to make it 3 straight. They're trying to increase those playoff odds to 52%. By the end of the weekend, they could be the 7th seed. Lots to play for the Browns, who are still right there at the second wild card spot. So lots to get into in this one, man.
No question about it. Last week's loss was a difficult one, obviously, for the Browns. And going out to Denver is always a difficult road trip. The Browns, in my opinion, made the smart move, decided just to take the trip a little further out west to LA. A little warmer weather, a little more relaxation. The team, obviously, is a little banged up here. We'll learn more in the coming days about who's going to be available, who's going to be in, who's going to be out. Certainly have questions still as who's going to be the quarterback. The definitive appears to be, if we don't hear of DTR practicing on Thursday, then in fact it will be the Browns' 4th starting quarterback this season, Joe Flacco, under center for the Browns on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, that was the most interesting thing about this game. That's the biggest storyline heading into it is, will it be Joe Flacco? 38-year-old Joe Flacco starting for the Browns. Last 12 games, 9 starts, 1-8 in those games. He led that 14-point comeback for the Jets against the Browns in 2022. And look, this is a Browns team that you're 5-2 with Deshaun Watson. You get DTR in there. By the way, full disclosure, I'm a UCLA guy, so always root for my boy Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But he gets hit last week. You saw the blood. It's unlikely probably he plays in. Joe Flacco, but under center. How you feeling about that, my man?
It's definitely interesting the way it's all come. Normally when you talk about a team about to start their 4th quarterback, you're talking about a team that's most likely going to be drafting, 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, in the spring when the, annual football draft comes up. But the Browns have found a way to make it work here. And, Coach Stefanski, Alex Van Pelt, to their credit, they found what works for each one of these quarterbacks. It's going to be a little different because, Joe Flacco comes in and at 38 years old, the athleticism is probably not much there. And the Browns have had athletic quarterbacks all season long, but he does come in with an absolute rocket arm. Joe Flacco can wake up 15 years from now and still be firing 30-yard spirals like it's nobody's business. And if there's any part of the offense that probably could use a kickstart, it's certainly the passing game. It struggled pretty much with every quarterback. I think DTR was starting to find his way a little bit. But Joe Flacco, and one thing I've always talked about with this Coach Stefanski offense is they have an issue getting the ball vertically down the field. Well, Joe Flacco, this is a guy that's kind of always been his calling card. He's always been a great vertical passing. So maybe this could be an element of the Browns offense that I haven't gotten to in at least a couple of seasons now.
Yeah, and that's going to really be the big key. This Rams secondary did a really nice job Last week, they were challenged early on by Kyler Murray, but they really shut him down. But Joe Flacco, he's always had a can, like you said. He's always had a big arm. He's someone that's not going to be afraid, of course, Super Bowl champion, right? So he's going to be someone that's going to come in and try to win games. I think that's one of the other big storylines in this game is, look, the Rams are just in better shape health-wise. The healthiest we've seen this Rams team in quite some time. You got Quentin Lake, he's out. Laurel Murchison. You have Matthew Stafford still dealing with that thumb injury. He's talked about how they've done a better tape job and they've streamlined it and he's getting more comfortable. But other than that, not really many injuries to speak of. Cooper Kupp isn't at 100%, still dealing with an ankle injury, not looking like the Triple Crown winning Cooper Kupp. But to me, that's the biggest key. The Browns, you even got Myles Garrett, the best defensive player on the planet right now, dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury. Joe Flacco starting at quarterback. Amari Cooper misses practice. I think 10 players total didn't practice for Cleveland. How is Cleveland heading into this game health-wise, and how big of a factor do you think that is?
For the most part, it's good. Like, the Browns have been really, really smart and cautious about this. And this is something actually new to this Stefanski and Barry regime. They didn't give a lot of days off in years past. But, they're mid and veteran. And you got to understand that guys like Joel Bitonio just can't go out there every day. And they can't go out there Wednesday, Thursday. Myles Garrett, even with the shoulder, and, Myles appears that he's going to play. There's things you can do. Obviously, Myles has been playing a lot of stand-up this year, so lining up over the guard, lining up over the center. These are still things you can do. You just can't get him for a full 100% of what would be his normal snap load, but Andrew Berry made the concessions and made the moves in this offseason to cover up for some of this. You brought in Zadarius Smith. You brought in, obviously, former Ram, Agbanaya Okoronkwo to help out with this. So they have length and depth in the defensive line. So if Myles can't give you 100%, I think they're okay with that. Bruises, Denzel Ward still hasn't taken the practice field. He was out last week. That certainly, it wasn't much of a factor last week against Broncos as much as it would be a key factor this week. Obviously, Kupp, Atwell, and of course, Nakua, all these fantastic route runners, and the Browns certainly would love to have the top corner for that. But the biggest question here, obviously, other than the quarterback position, certainly is, would Denzel Ward be available? And my gut feeling is it's trending towards he's not going to be available.
Yeah, so, that really puts the Rams in a good spot to get a Cleveland team at the right time. Because, look, where the Rams are sitting right now, you can't go 500 the rest of the way. You have to beat the teams where you're going against backup quarterbacks and potentially the Saints and most certainly the Cleveland Browns, and then teams like the Commanders and the Giants. You got to win those 4 games, and then you got the other 2 against the Ravens and the 49ers. So that is the path to the playoffs for the Rams. So if you lose this week against Cleveland at home, I know the dog pound's going to be out there in force. It's going to really, really throw a wrench in your playoff odds. If you're LA, they have some momentum. You got a really nice win against the Arizona Cardinals, one of the worst teams in the NFL, but you got guys in rhythm. They really have been struggling this year. Guys like Tyler Higbee. Guys like They has 2 touchdowns, right? You got Kyron Williams, who comes back off IR. He had a fantastic week. NFC Offensive Player of the Week, 8.9 yards per carry. So he was fantastic. So the offense has momentum coming into this game, but this is a different beast. This is the Cleveland Browns. This is the best defense in the NFL with a nightmare in cleats in Myles Garrett. You got a Matthew Stafford last week who they kept vertical. He took 0 sacks on 33 dropbacks. It's going to be a different story. It's going to be a different challenge. It's just about minimizing the damage. You're not going to stop Myles Garrett in this Cleveland Browns defense, but you just have to hope to limit it as best you possibly can. The Browns, a 28.5% pressure rate. That leads the NFL. Myles Garrett, 13 sacks. QB hits, he's 3rd in the league, a 94.1 PFF grade through 11 games. He's been absolutely ferocious, the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. And that, to me, is going to be the game right there. If you give Matthew Stafford time to cook, time to find receivers and let routes develop, he's going to generate offense. If you get in the backfield and they get home and they sack him, it could be a long afternoon for the Rams.
No question about it. And, that's one of the things that I think favors, the Browns this week as opposed to last week. Russell Wilson, we always talked about for the years about his ability. But the Browns do get in the backfield, and they get in the backfield quick. And Matthew Stafford obviously is, solid and accomplished as he is in his career. When you list his accomplishments and positives, you're not going to get to athleticism anytime high. You're certainly not going to be talking about anything where you're worried about Matthew Stafford and any designed runs or any of that stuff. So it's certainly a more favorable matchup. But obviously the wide receiver core for this Rams team, they're just really, really solid in what they do, really nuanced in their route running, get to the stems quickly, their breaks, in and out of the breaks quickly. It's really, really an impressive group. And it's kind of the talk here the whole season is anytime they talk to the secondary, they ask them about any game or, and first thing they say is, well, we ain't got to do much because normally the D-line puts so much pressure. Quarterback's either throwing the ball away or he's, ended up back on his kick. The Browns hopefully want to get back to that type of business this week here out in LA.
Absolutely. You talk about the receivers, those other key matchups. We're going to get into that here in our next segment. You got a crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On Browns.
All right, so we're getting to that point of the football season where you don't want to get off the couch. You don't want to leave your house. You don't want to miss a second of it. This is where DoorDash comes in, right? DoorDash can take care of all of the things you need outside the house without having to go outside of the house. You can order your pizza, your wings, your soda, your burgers, even if you just forgot ketchup and buns and, I don't know, tomatoes. DoorDash can get it all delivered to your front door without missing the game. All your favorite restaurants are there. All your favorite stores are there. From retail to grocery, they're all in the app so you can shop everything you need to get game day ready. You got a favorite spot in town? You got a wing spot like I do, like Santora's, and you want those wings specifically? DoorDash can hook you up, and you can get up to 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more with your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKED23. That's LOCKED, the number 23, LOCKED23. Again, that's 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download that DoorDash app and use the code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Enjoy the games and get yourself fed. Also, while you're doing that, why don't you get out your phone and get that PrizePicks app going, right? It is the most fun I've had playing daily fantasy sports in forever, right? And it gets more fun. Now that we got all these sports going at the same time, you can kind of cross the streams, right? Here's how you do it. You select 2 or more players, you pick more or less for their projected stats, and you place your entry. And right now, because basketball is here, you can pick a combo projection across football and basketball from a specials league, right? I've been doing a ton of football, a couple of football picks, but now you can do football and basketball, a league created specifically for combo projections that says, I don't know, Travis Kelce at 10.5 combo, 3-pointers made with LeBron James and receptions. Come on, man. Tell me you're not going to have fun with that, and you can win your money up to 25 times your money. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy, so if one of your guys stays in play, even if your player gets injured. For basketball and football games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return for the second half, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only DFS platform with an injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. One more time. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL. That code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100.
And we are off running here on this crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On Browns. And you are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, shout out to those every listeners. We appreciate you watching every episode, listening to every episode. Browns fans, Rams fans. And by the way, you can be an every listener too. Join the club. It's 100% free, and you won't miss a thing about your Browns or your Rams. Now, Jeff, here in our second segment, we're kind of dive into some of these matchups you just mentioned right now. The receivers, the talented receiving core that the Rams have. You have Cooper Kupp. You have the emerging rookie superstar in Puka Nacua. Well, last week, Matthew Stafford had his best statistical game of the season through 4 touchdowns, but it was a quiet afternoon for Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. I mean, they really didn't put together big games. He had 13 targets, 7 receptions, 45 yards. If they can get going, take advantage of their abilities, and I think that's going to be a big kicker in this game because you're going to need some more from them this week than you got last week if you want any chance to score points against this vaunted Browns D.
There's no question. And, sometimes, look, if you're playing the Rams, what are you going to do? You're going to try to take away Kupp. You're going to try to take away Nacua. That should be your game plan. Ideally, that's should be, your focus on what you're trying to do. And as for the Rams last week, obviously, Matthew Stafford found ways to still basically get cooking, with other guys back out. And of course, Higbee's best day of the season to this point last week as well. It's going to be interesting because if it is no Denzel, it's going to be interesting how it works out. Martin Emerson in his second year is a really, really solid cornerback for the Browns. But looking at Atwell, looking at Nakua, looking at Kupp, I'm not sure that any one of these guys is an ideal matchup for a second-year cornerback who's an emerging player. He plays better against the bigger physical receivers. The smaller Smurf, jet quick, route running types aren't normally always his cup of tea. But look, you're a good player. You got to adjust. You got to take the as they come to you. Greg Newsome certainly would be a better matchup here for any of these guys. As it looks now, if there is no Ward, both of these guys are slated to start. Greg Newsome, these are much better matchups for him as far as his type of athletic make, type of body frame. So it's certainly going to be interesting because you can't let Stafford start tossing the ball all over the place, because if they do, then comes in Kieran Williams, then comes in the running game. And the Browns obviously struggled against the run last week, although the overall numbers don't look as bad as it was. There were a lot of chunk runs last week, but the Browns certainly don't need to be playing defense 2 weeks in a row on roller skates.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to be one of the ways they're going to try to keep Stafford vertical and try to neutralize this Browns pass rush, is try to get something on the ground. It was the best we've seen this offensive line block, but then you got to take it with a grain of salt. It is the Arizona Cardinals. It is not the Cleveland Browns. And I think everyone's focusing on that Browns defense, and for good reason. I think one of the big storylines in this game is how does that Rams defense do against this Browns offense with so many questions, with Joe Flacco likely going to be the starter. And you look at this Browns offense, this pass offense in particular, last couple of games, they have not fared very well. Last week, 190 yards, 9.5 yards per attempt, a touchdown, 68.6 rating, under 14 points in back-to-back weeks, sacked 4 times, 7 QB hits. And the Rams, they're not a team that gets a ton of pressure, 7th lowest pressure rate in the league at 19.7%. They also don't cause a lot of turnovers. So I think that, to me, is one of the places where the game's going to be won. Look at who wins that turnover battle. 23 turnovers for the Browns, 31st in the NFL. Rams have the 3rd fewest takeaways in the NFL. So it's going to be very interesting. Rams 5 passes, intercepted, 4 fumbles, not a lot of takeaways, but the Browns have given away at least twice in their last 8 games. Can the Rams get an interception? Can they get a fumble? Can they give some momentum to this Rams offense in Browns territory to make it a little easier to cross that goal line against one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the National Football League?
There's no question. And this is probably the same storyline for the Cleveland Browns. They give the ball up a lot, and as great as their defense is, they do not get a lot of turnovers themselves. So a key turnover here for either Los Angeles or for Cleveland certainly could go a big way in being a deciding factor for this game. And even for the Browns, all the pressure they get, quarterbacks have been fortunate that most of the time they've held on to the ball. You got to think that eventually, that's not going to continue. Obviously, for the Rams fans, they're hoping that'll at least hold off for at least one more week. But what other team can win this turnover battle? Because, as you said, it seems that both teams have been accustomed to being on the wrong end of it for most of part of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you kind of dive into some of these specific matchups, I think one we talked about a little bit earlier about Cooper Kupp, we are waiting here as Rams fans to see any modicum of hope of the old Cooper Kupp, and he just has not moved the same. The routes haven't been the same. The blocking has been great during certain stretches. Don't get me wrong. He definitely had a big impact last week in Kyren Williams' big day, but we want to see Super Kupp once again. I think this is a week and an opportunity for him to get back to that. You got Cooper Kupp versus Greg Newsome. Kupp, like I said, he's been quiet last 5 games, has had 50 yards receiving last 5 games. Newsome's allowed 333 yards in coverage, 2 touchdowns this season. I think that's a matchup there in the slot. Cooper Kupp has a chance to really get back on track against Newsome.
Oh, he's certainly the guy, in 80 and 85, and certainly affecting, what Cooper Kupp can give this team. But there is the all factor of just being out there. And, regardless, if he is out there, any defense coordinator is going to say, our first job is to obviously eliminate number 10 to the best of our abilities. And then hopefully things, will work out for everywhere else. And that's going to be the biggest matchup. It still is. Even though Nakua has had a fantastic year, it's, and a lot of it does become in unison because you have the two of them and, they are similar in how they win. And so guess what? If you can't get it to this side, most likely you can get it to that side. But for now, the calling card still, if you're trying to beat the Los Angeles Rams, is obviously to try to keep Cooper Kupp in check. Because even if you cover him well, you can get a lot of targets sent that way. So, he still may get his 11, but if 19 balls were physically thrown to him, that means those were 8 balls that he ended up being in. So, it's a pick your poison type of thing with Kupp, but, you always going to go with the efforts of trying to take him out or at least limit him to the best that you can.
100%. I mean, he's someone that when he's right, he's one of the best in the league. I think it's more of a health issue right now for Cooper Kupp, and you just don't know when he's going to feel good and feel healthy. I think this is a great opportunity for him to really get back on track. Now, another matchup I'm looking at is Kobe Turner versus Ethan Postage. I mean, you look at up the middle, getting some pressure up the middle on Flacco. Kobe Turner, rookie out of Wake Forest, had his best game of the season last year, had 2 sacks, and you get that pressure up the middle, try to make things disruptive. That's going to go a long way.
Well, I mean, all the interior. I mean, you look at it from both ends. You bring up Wyatt Teller is back playing to the Pro Bowl level that he was when he first started his career with Cleveland. And I'm one where, look, the Myles Garretts of the world are great, but ideally, most of the time, these games are decided within the tackle box and between the matchups between the defensive tackles and the guards. Look, the tackles have the shortest path of resistance to go create damage and cause damage. So that is a big, big spot to where this game will be decided, certainly for the Browns. They've had a lot of, when I say issues at the tackle position, it's more of a revolving door. DeJuan Jones obviously was drafted. They were really excited about it, but the whole plan was for Jack Conn to be the right tackle the entire season. DeJuan Jones has been the starting right tackle since week 1. Jed Wills went down. This will now be the 4th game without Jedrick Wills. Jerron Christian has been thrown in there. And to his credit, I mean, talking about a guy who is on paper your 5th offensive tackle, and to think that he's playing left tackle for you during a crucial run of what is a successful season to this point. And he's actually played really, really well. He's a better pass blocker than their other swing tackle, James Hudson. James Hudson is a guy they use as an extra tight end. It's just a better role for him. But that's been one of the nice quiet finds here for the Browns this year, is that Jerron Christian has come in and kind of solidified and held it down here over the last 3 weeks. And also keep in mind, when we're talking about him, if Joe Flacco does go on Sunday, that will make Christian now the blindside protector for 3 different quarterbacks in 4 starts.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's definitely going to be those key matchups right there. The game is won or lost in the trenches for the most part, and I think it's going to be the case once again. I think you look at a lot of talk about the Rams receiving core, Amari Cooper, not just because he's on my fantasy team, but because he's, of course, one of your best weapons out there. Ahkello Witherspoon, he has been one of the best finds in the offseason, was great out as one of the top corners. Had a couple down weeks, but really got back on track last couple weeks. And Amari Cooper, he left the game with that rib injury. How's he going to fare? I think that's a matchup you're going to be focused on. Also, Jordan Fuller, Rams safety, had the best game of his career. He was outstanding. He almost had 2 interceptions, had 4 pass breakups going against David Njoku right there. He's an athletic freak, big physical tight end. You can try to limit those 2 playmakers for the Browns. I think that's going to go a long way to determining if the Rams can get a win on Sunday.
Cooper, and we'll see. And when Amari Cooper actually, it was week 2 when they were going to Monday night in Pittsburgh. He was dealing with some scar tissue issues from an off-season surgery, and there was no sure or whether or not he was going to play. And he was game time decision, did play, went for 7 receptions for 90 yards that night in Pittsburgh. So Amari Cooper's been a guy that can play dinged up. That being said, with Amari, it doesn't matter. The Browns need to get more than just Amari Cooper and David Njoku. Elijah Moore, I think, has been 14 receptions over the last 3 games. That number needs to get a little bit better. The Browns were caught up early in the season trying to use him as some sort of jack of all trades offensive weapon. Once they decided that he wasn't doing enough as a receiver, for anybody to be scared to death that they were lining him up in the backfield or they're giving him jet sweeps. That stuff starts when you're getting killed by somebody as a wide receiver, and then the offense takes the liberty of saying, well, you're trying to take him away, so we're going to use him different ways. Cedric Tillman, the rookie third-round pick, had his best week of his career last week. Granted, part of that is because he and DTR our former high school teammates. So it was really easy for those two to rekindle that relationship last week in Denver. But I also think for Tillman, this is one of those instances where just getting that first taste of NFL success and saying, oh, you know what? This spotlight is not too big for me. I am worthy of being here. I am capable of playing in this league. So regardless of who's behind center, I think he can see a role for Elijah Moore to increase and certainly for Cedric Tillman to increase because the Browns need that. They need more than just Cooper and Njoku. Not that they're not fantastic players, but the writing's on the wall. Nobody's fooled. Everybody knows most likely where the ball is going. So until those guys can become regular contributors, teams are going to give more and more of an effort to take away, obviously, Cooper and David Njoku.
100%. And, of course, you got the big one, Alaric Jackson and Myles Garrett. We'll talk about that. We got prediction time coming up, how this game will play out. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams and Locked On Browns.
So we're getting into that time of year where you're buying gifts for people, right? And you're thinking about it. Maybe you got kids, maybe you got a brother, a dad that loves to go to game, but you've had that frustrating experience trying to get your hands on the right tickets and the good seats, especially if you kind of wait until the last minute. You don't need to worry about it anymore. Gametime. The Gametime app needs to be on your phone. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. The Gametime app takes the guesswork out of buying tickets to your next big event, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show. Maybe you want to go see some theater, take your mom or your sister or your girlfriend, right? You can go do all of those sorts of things, and you don't need to do anything other than put the Gametime app on your phone. They have deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, even an hour after it starts. It is the absolute best place to find your last-minute seats. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create that Gametime app, Locked On NFL for $20 off. Go put the Gametime app on your phone. Terms apply.
And welcome back to this crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On Browns. Now, final segment here, prediction time. Like I said in the last segment, good luck to Alaric Jackson trying to sleep the night before going against the ferocious beast that is Myles Garrett. Of course, we're going to see how he fares in that situation. Definitely going to look at this defense for the Cleveland Browns. Can they continue their success holding teams to under 300 yards per game? I think if I'm the Rams, the momentum that they built last couple games, offensively, Matthew Stafford is getting healthier. He's getting into a groove. I think the defense has overachieved all season. And I think it's really going to come down to, can this Cleveland Browns team that struggled to score points, can you continue that trend of view of the Rams? And can you find a way to at least crack 20 points to give yourself a good chance to win at home?
Yeah, I think that's a safe way to go. And for the Browns, a lot of people were questioning last week. The Browns did run the ball well, but they didn't run the ball enough early in the game. And look, you got a rookie quarterback, 5th-round pick, and the Browns in that game, it's basically, look, is this our guy for the rest of the season? This is a team now sitting in 7-4. The thought process is legit that they're playing games in January. So you got to get the rookie up to speed. Unfortunately, he gets hurt. Now, do they try, in Joe Flacco, how much of the playbook does he know? Is he at, 65% maybe, which would be probably about right, which means probably a little more of a heavy on the run game. You're not just going to go put Joe Flacco in his first game of the season. You're not going to put him in shotgun and throw it 40 times unless you absolutely have to, certainly, which would not be ideal. But the Browns need to really be able to run the ball here. And again, look, if Stafford can get hot, it's going to aid you in that too, because he's a lot more chance of him being spectator as opposed to playmaker. Certainly helps. But the Browns need to get back to what they do best. And this team was always supposed to graduate to be more of a passing football team this year. That idea was with Deshaun Watson. So that thought process is kind of out the window again until 2024. This team just needs to do what they need to do to go 1-0. And this has kind of been the mantra. And, everybody to go 1-0 this week. What do you have to do? Browns, with all changing parts, with all the different quarterbacks, left tackles, right tackles, guys moving in, moving out, they've been able to really stick to that belief of what do we got to do to win this week. This week, shorten the game. You know what I'm saying? You're not worried about weather. Your kicker's been fantastic this year. Obviously, nice weather out in LA. Try to run the ball with some effectiveness, and then hopefully you can work in play action, a couple of deep shots after all that.
Yeah, that's absolutely going to be key. And the Rams bottom third in the league when it comes to rush defense last week against Connor. They definitely had some success with that. I think that's going to be key. Can you get yards on the ground with Ford? I think for the Rams, it's can you keep Matthew Stafford as vertical as possible? Because it's not just taking sacks. It's that one sack that puts him out of the game, and we see Carson Wentz, right? And you definitely don't want to put yourself in a situation where you have a backup quarterback. This team needs Matthew Stafford on the field, finding his receivers. I think can you build on the momentum of Kyron Williams? Can he have a game against a really, really good defense, right? One of the best defenses in the NFL that's allowed 320 fewer yards than any team out there because he's done against the Cardinals. Can he do anything like he did against the Cardinals against the Rams? And if he can, I think that would point to a Rams victory because I'm pretty confident they are going to get something through the air. I'm not going to lie. This Browns defense, and where you look at them, especially up front, that lines like that have caused problems for the Rams this season. And if Stafford gets banged up, things tend to not go so well. So it's going to be very interesting. Jeff, when you look at the mood in Cleveland right now, and you look at the injuries, I mean, Chubb goes on IR. You lose Deshaun Watson, but you're like you said, you're still in a great position to make the playoffs. Does it feel like you're playing with house money at this point, or does it feel like, no, we still need to go out there and make the playoffs considering we have this elite defense?
Oh, there's no way. No, I mean, I'm saying, and I'm a big proponent, and there's a lot of part of Cleveland that doesn't have the total faith in Coach Kevin Stefanski that I think they should. The fact that you're sitting here at 7-4, you've already played three different quarterbacks, one of them being a rookie. Most likely supposed to start your fourth quarterback of the season here. And look, there's these six remaining games. Obviously, this is a difficult one here with the Rams. Jacksonville is kind of tough. Don't know what is playing some really, really gutty football. But there is no excuse really for this Browns team to not find a way to maybe go 4-2 down this stretch and probably have an 11-6 season. And it's the NFL. Like, nobody's going to feel bad for you. And this is where it is kind of weird because this franchise, it's not like, even though this is almost Deshaun Watson's full second season here, he's not really played much. So it's hard to, view this and say, oh, well, no, you lost Deshaun. Well, he's been here for a long time. The amount that he's played is very minimal. So this, next man up mantra mentality is something that's been going on since the beginning of 2022.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a great point. This is nothing new to them. They're used to playing without him during certain stretches. So, yeah, I definitely think that's a factor. I think one of the big kickers, too, just to kind of wrap this up, is just that, look, this is another elimination game for the Rams. You can't lose this game and feel good about your chances to make the playoffs. You have to beat a Browns team at home, playing with a 38-year-old Joe Flacco, coming off 2 wins. You have to find a way to get this dub, and you can build on that momentum, look to sneak into the playoffs. So I don't know if you want to throw out a prediction. I usually throw mine out on Friday. I'm feeling pretty good about the Rams. Not ready to go there just yet, right? Has to come. I have to feel it. I have to feel the predictions. Do you want to throw out a prediction? Any final thoughts, Jeff?
Well, I mean, and look, and I'm the same way you, and obviously the way this world has gone is, obviously Locked On, they require us minimum 5 shows per week. When you get this late in the season, you really can't do the 5. You have to do the 6 because even if you record Thursday or Friday morning, you have no idea. You still don't. And look, I mean, how am I supposed to predict a game when I don't know who's going to be the quarterback for my team on Sunday?
Yeah, no, exactly,
and one of the guys who might be the quarterback on Sunday has never taken a snap for my team. Plus, I think that we all get into that Friday feel, and then all of a sudden we might be woe is us, woe is us, woe is us. And then Friday it's, the boys are going to be all right. We're going to be okay. We're going to win. So, I think it's going to be a closely contested game. I definitely think this game will be played within 7 points, regardless of who wins. I think you're going to at times get some teams that you're going to get some stretches where the offense looks good, and then you're going to get a couple of drives where you're going to see all of a sudden it's 4th and 19 for probably the Rams at some point, and then certainly for the Browns at some point. It's not going to be, they're not going to hang it in the Louvre by any means whatsoever. But these are the games.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to come down to, I think, the turnover battle. I think how many times Matthew Stafford, they can get to him and be disruptive. But at the end of the day, this one's going to come down to the fourth quarter. And we've seen this Rams team close last couple of weeks. The trend for them this year is they haven't been able to put 4 quality quarters together in the same game. Can they do that? Can they learn from their mistakes? Can their young rookies continue to emerge and figure things out at this level? That's going to be key. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams and Locked On Browns crossover edition. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_late. And you can follow my man, Mr. Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd over on the X. Until next time. Whose house is Locked On Rams house?